Hey guys, welcome to my double Mjolnir Battlemage Titan build. This build revolves around proccing 3 instances of Lightning Warp with each melee hit. I played this build since the beginning of the Down of the Hand League and I want to share my insights with you. For me, the best thing about this build is how perfectly it fits the fantasy of a Lightning Battlemage who wields the power of thunder into battle. Moreover, it is an actual strength plus int build which utilizes both armor and energy shield and uses Mjolnir's power for damage purposes. We are able to clear T15 plus maps with ease while simultaneously being a tank who almost never dies. Whilst clearing maps already feels amazing, this build truly begins to shine in Pinnacle Bosses fights. Overall, we proc our 3 Lightning Warps by having 2 Thunder God gems from our double Mjolnir setup. As proccing meta skills is easier on unique enemies, it is enough for us to just mace strike bosses to death and observe the destructions our warps cause. When mapping, the only tool we really need is Leap Slam. By picking it as our main skill, we are able to move and clear at the same time, whilst our lightning warps cover most of the screen. I personally do not like using Trample Toes, and I do not think it is needed in this build, as the AoE we get from being a Titan and having hulking form for passive scaling alongside magnified effect is more than enough. In this build, we utilize the deepest tower helmet for both attack and spell damage scaling. We boost our damage even further by using Mana Tempest, equipping Sigil of Power on our weapon swap, and by using the Soul Offering buff. On tougher fights, such as T4 Delirium, we also begin to use our second melee skill, Bone Shatter. When our Leap Slam fails to proc Lightning Warps by itself, Bone Shatter comes in as a handy and a quick solution for not getting stuck during combat. In conclusion, in my opinion, my double Mjolnir Battlemage Titan build is best described as an all-rounder. It clears fast, it destroys bosses, it really is a strength plus int build using armor and energy shield. It fits a fantasy that is yet to be explored by RPG enthusiasts playing Path of Exile 2. If you are interested in discovering the specific mechanics I used to create this build, then stay a while and listen. The rest of this guide is going to teach you all the specifics needed to create such a build on your own. If you are more of a written guide enjoyer, then please visit the Mobalytics page of this build that I uploaded already almost a month ago. It is very specific and I'm going to update it whenever a patch drops. Please share with me any feedback you have. This is my first proper YouTube video ever and I really wonder where I can improve as I plan to release more Strength Plus Int guides in the future. I already have one more guide planned for this patch and I think it is as druidy as it can get. So, let's get cooking. Let's first discuss the exact gems we have to equip. As you already heard, our main goal is proccing 3 Lightning Warps. We do that with 2 Thunder God's Wrath meta gems, which we acquire from our double Mjolnir weapon setup. Those gems basically make us trigger socketed lightning spells whenever we reach enough energy by dealing enough damage with our melee attacks. How much energy we gain is modified by the monster type we deal damage to, i.e. monster power, which means that dealing damage to normal monsters makes it harder for us to trigger our socketed spells than dealing damage to unique enemies such as bosses. After the last patch, GGG changed it so that those spells we trigger do not cost any mana and deal a lot of increased damage, allowing our build to truly shine. So why, from all the lightning spells available, do we pick Lightning Warps? First of all, they have a real short cast time, and cast time of socketed spells and meta gems determines the total amount of damage we have to deal with melee attacks to proc them. Each 0.1 second of cast time equals plus 10 to energy cap needed to trigger socketed spells. Second and third of all, they have great AoE, which allows us to clear screens of monsters and great base damage and makes killing bosses very easy. The only con of this spell is that it can only be used on enemies that are on low life and can be cooled, or instead on ball lightnings. As most of our damage comes exactly from those warps, we have to make our warps proc on ball lightnings instead of our enemies, as otherwise they would not be reliable. This is exactly why the first spell we socket in our first Thunder God's Wrath is Ball Lightning. We only use it as an option to proc Lightning Warps, but as our socketed spells do not cost mana, we socket the highest level of Ball Lightning available to us for some damage boost, preferably level 20 with Corrupted modifier +1 to gem level. This rule of corrupted with +1 to level gems is gonna hold for all the rest of our skills, especially all our lightning warps. A good thing is that when it comes to all our socketed spells and corruption modifiers, we do not care about the amount of support sockets those spells have, as we already socket all of them into our Thunder God's Wrath. This makes crafting them quite easy. Next to our bow lightly, we socket Scattershot support gem to make our bow fire 3 projectiles instead of 1, thus making us able to use 3 warps simultaneously. The only downside of this support gem is the reduction of damage of all socketed spells next to it that it causes, which extends itself to the only lightning warp we equip in this Thunder God's Wrath. Nonetheless, without Scattershot equipped, our build just doesn't work, so we have to use it. The last support gem we socket here is Impetus. We do so because our socketed ball lightning and lightning warp sums up to 150 energy cap, as the roll cast time of those spells is 1.5 seconds, and we want for those spells to proc easier than our second Thunder God's Wrath, where our energy cap will be lower. It is lower here, as we only socket 2 lightning warps. Combined, they have 1 second cast time, which results in a cap of just 100 energy in our second meta gem. However, those 2 meta gems we have trigger almost always simultaneously, as our first gem with the higher energy cap is equipped with the previously mentioned Impetus, which fixes the disparity between the energy caps and energy gain modifiers in those gems. Make sure that one of your warps has plus 20% quality for the magnitude of shock inflicted. More quality warps are not needed, as those do not stack shocks with each other and only the strongest shock is applied. We scale the damage of our 2 warps here with Execute, which works on all enemies in our presence because we use the deepest tower helmet. We finish off our combo with Magnified Effect Support Gem for better screen clearing capabilities. Sigil of Power is another skill we have because of the weapons we equip. It comes from our weapon set 2, in which we use a chiming step. We use this skill exclusively on Pinnacle bosses, as it grants us a massive spell damage boost, even up to 64% more, based on the amount of mana we spend while it lasts. We achieve this end threshold regularly, as the rest of our pre-bosses setup combo uses enough of our mana for the sigil to be the most potent. We do not socket any support gem into it for now, as we use it elsewhere, but you will see later in the video what support gem we equip it with when switching to our Pinnacle bosses setup. The last skill gem we have automatically equipped is Mace Strike. We use it mainly on bosses, but sometimes it happens so that we finish off rares with it. When it comes to support gems, we aim to make our Mace Strike deal a lot of damage so that it procs our Thunder God's Wraths more predictably. We achieve it with Consecrated Effect, which does not cause any downsides on our Mace Strike. We further boost its physical damage with Brutality, Heavy Swing, and Heft, which all combined were perfect for us, as because of our gear we do not deal a different type of damage with our attacks other than physical. The last support gem we equip here is Excoriate, as it always gives us 10% more damage because of the shocks our warps regularly apply. Finally, the first skill we really choose is Leap Slam. As you already saw in this build preview, this is the skill we actually use the most when we fight hordes of enemies while mapping. We choose Leap Slam as it allows us to clear while moving, it scales its base damage very well, and because it causes extra stun buildup. Especially because of its high base damage, we do not really have to socket it exclusively with support gems that would make it deal more damage, but we can instead emphasize on various utility options from which we greatly benefit. Most importantly, we socket our Leap Slam with Martial Tempo, making it faster to use without any downsides. This makes our mapping way faster and more enjoyable. Also, crucially, we equip it with Holy Descent, which grants us a massive life regeneration increase. This is a big layer of defense for us, because it perfectly synergizes with Zealous Oath Keystone that we run in our passive tree. As we run armor instead of evasion, we get hit with everything all the time, and thus life regen is really good, especially that it also works on our energy shield, effectively making it just an extension of our life. As you can see, on my current setup I have around 100 life regen, but whenever I Leap Slam it goes up to 260. Lastly, when it comes to utility, we equip Unabating, which grants us around 125% increased armor whenever we Leap Slam, and as we Leap Slam all the time, we basically always have this huge armor increase. Normally I have around 15,000 armor, but because of this gem it is almost always 17,000. For our less interesting but important damage boosts, we equip Momentum, as it gives us the biggest damage multiplier, 40%, and as it procs on almost all Leap Slams, as we always try to leap as far as we can for the fastest possible clear. The last support gem we socket Leap Slam with, and which benefits our damage with it, is one of the elemental infusions. I picked Cold Infusion because I have some extra cold damage increases in my corrupted jewels, but you can pick whatever suits you. If you don't have any increases to a specific element, then I would suggest to stick to Cold Infusion, as if something survives your hits, you don't really want more damage with, for example, Ignite, but you can still benefit from the slow of chaining your enemies. Our third and last melee skill is Bone Shatter. We mainly use it on more difficult content like T4 Delirium, but sometimes also in maps. We finish our enemies with it if anything survives our leap sum and is primed for stun. Priming enemies happens often to us because with our hybrid melee spell setup, we don't deal enough damage to the toughest enemies to stun them with leap sum by itself, but just the perfect amount of damage to prime them for stun. With that in mind, when it comes to Bone Shatter, we just want to boost its damage as much as possible, as we want to have full certainty for it to proc our warps multiple times when used. For that, we equip it with, obviously, Impact Shockwave, another one of the elemental infusions, this time Lightning because of Innervate, which we also pick, and Close Combat as it always works on it. The only not damage related support gem we equip our Bone Shatter with is Unbreakable. It makes it so that we can cast our Bone Shatter even when we are getting swarmed by magnitudes of enemies. It might be a controversial pick for some, but I really like it. Still, if you prefer even more damage and don't fear getting stunned, then you can equip Embitter and switch your Lightning Infusion in Bone Shatter with Leap Sum's Cold Infusion, thus making Vista benefit from our Innervate as well as our Bone Shatter, and in my case make Bone Shatter deal more damage because of the cold damage increases I have. The first Spirit Gem we equip is Overwhelming Presence. We do so as we benefit from both the reduced stun threshold and ailment threshold of our enemies. The latter one works very well with Thunder God's Wrath because we proc socketed spells easier based on the ailment threshold we deal. The topic of ailment threshold is very interesting but complex, so if you want to learn more about it, then I suggest you watch SilentStill's video that covers this topic, which I highly recommend. I will attach the link to this video in my video's description. In short though, for the purposes of this build guide, if we reduce enemies' ailment threshold, then we will proc our warps easier. We socket our Overwhelming Presence with Precision to cap our accuracy rating. This is especially important for us, as we don't run Resolute technique and we cannot go for anything else other than a 100% accuracy rating on all our melee attacks, as it would make our build way slower and less reliable. We also socket Vitality here for extra life regeneration, which works on our energy shield again because of having the Zealous Oath keystone. Our second Spirit Gem is Blasphemy, which we equip with Conductivity for extra lightning damage of our warps. You can also socket it with Temporal Chains and Encumbrance for another defensive layer based on slowing enemies around you, but I personally prefer to just have more damage. Here, I want to point out that this Temporal Chains tech is something I took from an amazing content creator Lexyu and his recent build guide, which surprisingly covers a similar build to mine with double Mjolnir, but it instead covers a chaos damage version of it run on a lich with evasion energy shield defense setup instead of the thing that I do. He is a big inspiration of mine when it comes to build guide format, and I strongly encourage you guys to also watch his guides as they are really superb to most PoE's content out there. I will also attach a link to his guide in this video's description. The last skill we really use on our everyday mapping setup is Mana Tempest, which we use only on bosses. It works great with our build, as it adds even more lightning damage without having any cost, as both our Maze Strike and Thunder God's Wrath procs cost 0 mana. We socket it with Premeditation, which grants our warps 15% more damage multiplier, which is a lot. The other two support gems we use are Arcane Tempo and Mobility, as they make our Mana Tempest smoother to cast. Now, coming to the section of our skills that we exclusively use on Pinnacle bosses, the first one is just Conductivity. Remember, if you're already running Conductivity in Blasphemy, then you have to deactivate Blasphemy before Pinnacle encounters, as otherwise Blasphemy will have priority over our cast Conductivity, making the reduced lightning resistances of our enemies weaker. For this Conductivity that we actually cast, we socket it with Heightened Curse for more effect, Curse Ground to make it usable when the boss we face is still in its spawn animation phase, and Expand for more area of effect, which makes it easier to hit. Lastly, we want it to cost less, as it gets very expensive on the higher gem levels, and so we equip Inspiration for it. To reduce our enemies' resistances even further, we equip Orb of Storms. We wanted to apply lightning exposure, so we socketed it with conduction, lightning exposure, and strip away, making it shock more often and actually apply a stronger lightning exposure on shock. To increase the likelihood of our orb shocking, we increase its damage with Considerate Casting and Ambrosia. And I know what you might be thinking, Ambrosia is an overkill to such a skill, but trust me though, we can't re-socket Ambrosia anywhere else and it works here just perfectly. Similarly to Conductivity, we cast Orb of Storms before the boss actually spawns so that our orb is ready to apply Lightning Exposure on hit instantly upon its spawn. It is also important to point out that even though both Conductivity and Orb of Storms cost so much, we benefit from it as those heavy mana costs make us able to reach the final stage of our Siege of Power easily. The last buff we want to benefit from in Pinnacle encounters is Soul Offering. First of all, we have to socket it with Persistence, as its duration is normally shorter than the duration of our other buffs. To make its effect stronger on us, we focus on its level, and so we socket it with Minion Mastery, which grants it an additional level, and we also make its base level 21 by having it be corrupted with +1 level of Skill Gem. We then socket it with Dance Macabre and Ablation for the increased buff magnitude. Because of Dance Macabre though, we have to cast it on 2 skeletons instead of 1. We do that on Skeletal Clerics as they cost the least amount of spirits, 2 cost 40. We socket them with Last Gasp, so that even if they somehow die pre-fight, we can still use our Soul Offering on them. We also add Meat Shield and Elemental Army support gems to them so that the probability of them dying decreases. Lastly, we can also quality this gem for the same reason, as it gives more maximum life to our clerics. In order to play this build effectively, you have to set your Conductivity, Orb of Storms, Soul Offering and Skeletal Clerics to your weapon set 2, so to your Chiming Staff, and the rest of your skills to your Mjolners, so to weapon set 1. When it comes to our passive skill tree, we mainly want to satisfy the following goals. Increase both our attack and spell damage at the same time. We do so by having the deepest tower helmet equipped and by picking damage against enemies on low life nodes, as they scale all our damage unproportionately better than anything else, with the most important nodes being Finality and Stars aligned. Scale our damage and energy shield setup. For that, we pick all of those hybrid and armor only nodes like Ancient Aegis, Reinforced Barrier and Sturdy Metal. Make it easier for us to satisfy our high attribute requirements and needs of around 250 strength, 205 intelligence and 60 dexterity. To do that, we pick nodes that grant us some benefits we profit from, but also some extra attributes on top, like Relentless Vindicator, Battle Hardened or even Spellblade. We pick the Titan Ascendancy as it fits our vision perfectly because it supports all of our previously highlighted goals. The most important one of them being Hulking Form. It significantly improves the damage increases we get from damage against enemies on low life small nodes. More importantly though, it makes our hybrid armor and ES setup very effective as it makes scaling those defensive stats doable in any sense. For now, I actually believe that without Hulking Form, those hybrid nodes do not actually grant sufficient stats, so they are necessary on all armor plus ES builds. The other seemingly unimportant but actually key parts of our ascendancy that we get from pathing to Hulking Form are the percentage strength increases. Without this 8% increase, satisfying our attribute requirements would be almost impossible in our current setup. We actually also benefit from this little chest we get to own as we carry in it the items we use on Pinnacle bosses without losing any of our normal space. The Titan Ascendancy also provides a huge armor boost to our defensive layer as it grants us 50% more armor from its Stone Skin node. We benefit from it greatly as this more multiplier is one of the strongest armor boosts we have. This last part of our Ascendancy buffs our previously mentioned life and ES regeneration tech from Zealot's Oath Keystone while adding to our general tankiness. Now talking about keystones, the only one we use other than Zealot's Oath is Eternal Youth. When combined with Zealot's Oath, only Eternal Youth's second line of text works. This combo allows us to spam our life flask for a crazy amount of ES regeneration whenever we face a greater threat. For this to work really well, we equip a life flask with as much life recovery as possible and with the affix which grants the chance of getting a charge whenever we kill an enemy. With that setup, we should never run out of flask charges even if we spam our life flask. The only nodes we pick for our general passives that weren't mentioned previously are 3 Lightlink penetration nodes. We take them universally to make sure that after casting Orb of Storms, our orb has an easier time shocking the boss we are facing and thus applying its lightning exposure with more probability. It is also good for mapping, as it makes us deal more damage with our warps to all enemies. Moreover, the Breath of Lightning node provides us with +10 to dexterity, making our accuracy ratings needs easier to satisfy. For weapon set 1, we further choose AoE scaling that works on both our attacks and spells, making both our leap slam and our warps bigger. Triggered spells damage and energy gain modifiers as they have good numbers on them. Magnitude of Shock, which gives us more damage instead of a damage increase, which works especially well on bosses who are always shocked by us. Additional life regeneration nodes that boost our survivability. And nodes that we would benefit from in both of our weapon sets, but that we have to pick for weapon set 1 because of the lack of general points to spend. For weapon set 2, we instead, very importantly, pick skill effect duration nodes which make all of our buffs last comfortably long. Increased curse magnitudes for our conductivities. And some AoE for spells to make our sigil bigger and thus easier to stand on. Remember that whenever we path to some weapon set 2 nodes, we always pick Intelligence as our attribute of choice for the extra mana, as we can use it to cast our buffs. Lastly, for our jewels we pick One from Nothing Diamond that allows us to pick nodes around Unwavering Stance, which allows us then to save a few points that we would otherwise lose on pathing to Finality and its corresponding nodes. This is especially important as because of the Deepest Tower helmet we have our presence area of effect decreased and we don't want to spend any actual passive points on it. We then want one of those sapphires to have more damage increases like lightning damage or elemental damage and also energy gained modifier. We want the other jewel to instead have mana and life recovery on kill for some extra sustain during mapping. The mana one is seriously crucial. You can also try to corrupt your jewels with +2 attributes modifiers to make your attribute needs easier to satisfy. As you can see, if you prefer AoE above damage, then you can also pick that. The most important jewel we socket though is the Prism of Belief diamond with +2 lightning warp levels. The level of our lightning warp is our biggest damage scaling possibility, and so this jewel is really important for this build to function properly. For our gear, let's first start with our mighty Mjolners. The most important stats for us are +2 level of all lightning skills and the base level of Thunder Ghost Wrath. For the first one, we want +4 or even a corrupted +5, but they are incredibly rare, and for the latter one, we want a base level 19. The increased physical damage of our Mjolnir should be at least +300%, that way proccing our lightning warps becomes way easier. We also greatly benefit from attack speed, but I think that even with lower rolls, our leap slam clearing is still good with just martial tempo equipped. In general, the better rolls we have of any of Mjolnir's stats, the better, as we can use all of them. For corruption though, I would advise to either aim for the +5 to level of all lightning skills affix, a high damage roll, or even 2 sockets. In my case, the 2 sockets in one of my Mjolnirs is necessary, as without it I would not cap out my accuracy rating. Speaking of it, for sockets you should use vision runes to cap your accuracy if you still need it. If you have enough, then equip the Soul Core of Azkapa for extra spirit that is needed to run the previewed setup of this build. To cap the capabilities of our Sigil of Power and other buffs we cast, we use Chiming Staff. We want it to have +2 level of all spell skills, preferably +6. The other affixes we benefit from are increased cast speed, additional maximum mana, or +2 intelligence. Those, however, are not that necessary, so I wouldn't stress much about them. For our deepest tower, we want it to be corrupted with 2 sockets for easier gearing, as our setup makes it hard for us to cap both attributes and resistances. For its stats, we want it to have as much life, armor, and energy shield as it can, and also enough chaos res so that our gear as a whole gives us 75% chaos resistance. The last unique we have equipped while mapping is Levinstone Ring. We use it because it adds a level to all of our lightning skills, and as you have previously learned, this is the best way for us to scale our damage. We don't really care about its other affixes, but we want it corrupted with either +2 attributes or increased resistances for easier gearing. For our other ring, we want as much resistances as possible, as we wanted to cover for the lack of many affixes we could have had if we had a rare ring instead of Levinstone. With such, I have a sapphire ring with 3 additional resistances rolls equipped, but overall you should aim to equip one that fits with the rest of your gear and the resistances you already have in other slots. The second affix we really need in this ring slot is flat accuracy rating, with a minimum of plus 300 to it. Without this roll, you will probably not be able to reach your accuracy rating cap. We also benefit greatly from plus to maximum life, but this is not necessarily needed. Other affixes that might be of use for us is increased lightning damage or added physical damage. Sadly, I don't have a ring with that. We want our amulet to grant us attributes from its base type, and then we seek a plus 3 to level of all spells, as, again, this is the biggest damage boost we can get. For other stats, we really wanted to have both resistances and attributes. Other than that, for its prefixes, we can be happy with plus to maximum life, percentage increased maximum life, increased armor, increased energy shield, and whatever else can boost our defense. For our anoint, we pick Invocated Efficiency for the most increased damage we can get for our warps in a single node. Please note though, that this first line of text of Invocated Efficiency does not work, as we do not invoke spells, we trigger them. This anoint though is not that important for our build to function, so if you have a fitting amulet with a different anoint, then you can use it and probably do just fine. The build we use should have both attributes and resistances, as without those on almost all of our gear, we simply cannot make this build work. If you are on a high budget, then you can also look for a build with plus to maximum life and plus to armor. Also, in my opinion, plate belt is the best in slot for us as it grants us additional armor. Our body armor is our main layer of defense, so it is crucial for us to have it with high rolls. We want it to be a wolfskin mantle for the highest base armor and energy shield available. We needed to have 3 resistances rolls and then as much armor and energy shield as possible, preferably also with an additional socket for even more armor and ES scaling with a 3rd iron rune. Lastly, it is best if it also has plus to maximum life on it. You should aim for around 1000 armor and 350 energy shield for some very comfortable mapping gameplay. Lastly, it is best if it also has plus to maximum life on it. When it comes to our boots, we wanted to have the same key stats as all our other items, but with a 35% increased movement speed affix. If we satisfy most of our attributes and resistances needs with our other items, then things can get more interesting when it comes to our gloves. If you struggle though to reach those needs, then you need to stick to getting your resistances and attributes first. If you're set with that, then on your gloves you can find an affix of plus 2 to melee skills. This boosts all our melee damage significantly and so makes proccing our warps way easier. To be honest, without gloves with this affix, encounters like T4 Delirium are very hard to complete. If you have even more room for some nice affixes, then you can also equip here plus 2 rarity. This is sadly the only slot in which we can equip it, as everywhere else we need to put attributes and resistances. When it comes to runes, you need to socket iron runes in your body armor and attribute runes and resistances runes in all other places until you have your resistances and attributes capped. For our charms, we want Thawing Charm, as being frozen means almost always insta-death on probably all builds. We also need a silver charm, as slows are very unpleasant for us because how they work on Leap Slam, basically making it stop mid-air. If you can, then equip the Fall of the Axe unique version of this charm, as it grants you Onslaught, which makes mapping faster for you. Lastly, if you get a belt with 3 charm slots, then as your 3rd charm you can equip the Sanguis Harem Stanching Charm. It is in general an underrated charm, but it works perfect for us as it solves the problem we have with bleeds and also adds to our life regeneration on top of that. I would also like to add that even though I said in the build preview that I don't like using trample toes, they are still a viable option. For me, this is just preference, but if you like trample toes more, then go ahead and equip it with 2 sockets for more extra socketed attributes. In such a setup, you also have to include more resistances on your gloves, so take that into consideration. Some people might probably also wonder, why do we use the Deepest Tower helmet instead of Crown of the Ice? The answer is pretty simple. All of the spell damage increases summed from the tree give us less increase overall than damage against enemies on low life nodes. Not only that, but to get the maximum spell damage increase bonus from our tree, would also have to spend more points than with what we have equipped now. I played like that for a few weeks at the beginning of this league, but it just underperforms. Hopefully, this will change with the next season. Now, I would like to show you the gear and gem swaps we do before fighting pinnacle bosses such as Xesht or King in the Mist. It is fairly simple, but required if you want to kill those bosses in under 6 seconds and farm their loot. First, we switch our mapping gloves for dealer's tenures, increasing the damage of our lightning orbs even more. We want those gloves to be corrupted with 2 sockets for the additional attributes we can socket into them. Next, we open our skills tab, and then in order, we swap impetus for deliberation for some extra damage. We move magnified effect to sigil of power, and then socket zenith in our main damage Thunder God's Wrath gem. Next, we completely remove blasphemy and vitality from our gems. Lastly, we socket attrition and move mysticism into our overwhelming presence. Alternatively, if you prefer to, you can remove the lightning warp we usually socket in our first Thunder Gods alongside impetus and socket 2 arcs instead. From my tests, this setup saves us another second while farming pinnacle bosses. With all this newly acquired knowledge, we are ready to rule Werklust once and for all. Thank you so much for watching my first video build guide ever. I hoped you enjoyed it and that you will be able to experience the same joy I did when I first built this setup myself. I would love to again give a shout out to SilentStill and his mechanics explanation series, and for Lexyu for both his work in general and his latest build guide on a different double Mjolnir build. Please leave any feedback for me, as I can't wait to improve the quality of my guides for you, especially that I have this druid one coming in probably a month or so. If you have any questions for me when it comes to a double Mjolnir Battlemage Titan build, then please leave a comment, I will for sure answer all of them. In the meantime, you can find the links to both Mobalytics and PoE Ninja of this build in the description below. Thanks again, and remember, Polska Górą!